Drop those seedlings! Do not, I repeat, do not plant your precious seedlings in the garden until you watch this video. Don't make the same mistake I did. The very first year I ever gardened, I actually started a ton of seedlings in my partner's greenhouses, located here. Those are tropical greenhouses, so those seedlings were getting spoiled. They were getting beautiful indirect light, bright indirect light, tons of humidity, lots of light, and very little to no wind. In my excitement, I planted everything directly from the greenhouse in the garden. And the next day, I can't. It's still hard, you know. I come out to the garden to find every seedling scorched to death. It was tragic, y'all. Literally every seedling I planted died. So, yeah, don't do that. Whether you are starting seeds in a greenhouse, indoors, on a grow shelf, there is one very important thing you need to do before transplanting anything in the garden, and that is called hardening off your seedlings. Like I mentioned about those greenhouses, my seedlings were spoiled. They were getting perfect conditions. They were soft, they were tender, they were fragile. So before you take them to the harsh conditions of a garden, you have to acclimate your seedlings to the outside conditions, bracing them for the outside world, for the real world. Now, acclimating your seedlings is fairly simple, honestly. It just takes a bit of time. So be patient and please do this. It would be so tragic to spend all this time, all this effort growing all of these babies just for them to die as soon as they go to the garden. So here's how to acclimate your seedlings. First, find a shady spot in your garden. Or if you don't really have a shady spot, wait until you get some cloudy weather. Or until later evening when the sun is not nearly as intense. Think underneath a tree, somewhere where they aren't exposed to that full harshness of the sun. They'll get some shade, they'll even get some dappled light, which is really great, but nothing with full sun. Please. Once you find your shady area, place your seedlings there for 1 hour on the very first day. Just 1 hour. Set that timer and run out as soon as it's done to get your seedlings and put them back inside. Then the next day, put your seedlings in that same spot for 2 hours. On the third day, 3 hours. On the fourth day, 4. On the fifth day, 5. On the sixth day, 6. And by the end of that week, your seedlings should be able to endure a shady spot outdoors for at least 6 hours a day. Now, the real scary part comes when you introduce your seedlings to full sun for the first time. After a full week in the shade, you're gonna go outside on day 8 for 1 hour and drop your seedlings in that full sun. If you're anything like me, you'll be standing over them like a hawk for that full hour. So you know nothing goes wrong. After that 1 hour, bring them back inside and repeat that process in full sun for a week. On day 2, 2 hours. On day 3, 3 hours. On day 4, 4 hours. On day 5, 5, and so on. By the end of that week, your seedlings should be able to endure full sun for at least 6 hours, for the whole day, honestly. And then, and only then, after 2 weeks of hardening off your seedlings, you can transplant them in the garden. Finally! It is a long and tedious process, but so worth it. A few things to note when hardening off your seedlings, especially when you're introducing them to full sun. You may notice something on the leaves called scorching, bleaching, really just any whitening on the leaves. And more specifically on the older leaves, the leaves that grew out when they were indoors. That is completely normal. What you want to be paying attention to are the new leaves, that new growth. Everything that's new, that's coming out, is gonna grow fresh and green. If it does, that's how you know you are on the right track with your seedlings. Those new leaves are hardened off and acclimated to the outdoor conditions. I also wouldn't recommend watering your seedlings before putting them outside, or at least immediately before putting them outside. A few hours before them going outside, sure, but not immediately before, because any extra moisture on the leaves Any droplets could literally act as a magnifying glass and burn the leaves on your plants. You don't want that. One of the things that might be a little tricky to prepare them for is the wind. So something I would recommend if growing them inside, get a fan. Literally place a fan on your seedlings and have them consistently blowing a gust of wind on them. That's gonna actually toughen up the stems of your plants and make them nice and hardy. That consistent airflow is great for your plants, and it really does toughen up that stem. They love it. Now, I am making this video particularly because it's actually time for me to harden off my seedlings. But my conditions this year are different than any other year I have grown my seedlings before. Like I mentioned, I grew my seedlings in my partner's tropical greenhouses. His roof is different than my roof. His roof has 2 layers of white plastic that diffuses the sunlight that's shining through significantly. I don't. I actually have pretty clear polycarbonate. It does have a UV coating on the other side, but the sunlight that my seedlings are being exposed to is already a lot harsher, a lot more intense than the sunlight they were getting in that greenhouse. So, I'm wondering, I might not need to put them in the shade to harden them off. Will I gravely regret this? So here's what I've been doing. I've actually been putting them out in direct sun. But on the very first day, I only put them out for 30 minutes. And there wasn't any scorching on them. They survived wonderfully. Yesterday was actually a pretty cloudy and rainy day. So I set them outside, full exposure to whatever light was coming into the garden for 2 whole hours. Now today, it's not full sun, it is later evening, but it's still pretty bright compared to what they're getting in the greenhouse. I'm gonna set them outside again for 2 hours to see what happens. I'm still like 10 to 12 days away from like planting them in the garden. So I definitely have quite a bit of time to harden them off. So I'm kind of just experimenting right now. All I know is I don't have to put them in the shade because, I mean, if you see under that tree, it's very dark compared to what these babes are getting in here, especially throughout the day. Like once that sun is overhead, it is really bright in here. So let's put him outside. A whole new world, a whole new land that I can see. Welcome to the world, babes. Merlin, don't eat my plants. Oh my God, this is so nice being able to go right from my greenhouse to the garden. Ugh. I don't know if you could tell, but my partner's greenhouse is like over there, pretty far down there. I would have to lug every single tray from deep within the depths of the greenhouse all the way up the stairs to under that tree multiple times a day for 2 weeks. This is great. All right, babes. 2 hours. The timer starts now. Don't die! So I've only been really exposing them to cloudy days and evening sun. I'm probably not gonna expose them to full sun, direct sunlight until they get a few days with this kind of exposure. I'm not trying to fry them out. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. We don't want that. Absolutely not. And there you have it. There's my brief explanation on hardening off your seedling. Please stay tuned to see how the rest of this process goes on. We are so close to planting all of these babes in the garden. I am so excited. Ah! Abundance is right around the corner. I can't wait. Now that I'm actually hardening off my seedlings, now is a wonderful time to start preparing this garden. So stay tuned for that. If you have any questions on hardening off, please drop them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, drop in abundance down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Bye.